So what effect will this have on the Southeast Asia region? Joining us tonight on Asia Prime, we have Pak Muhadi Sugiono from the International Relations Faculty at Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and also Ibu Syafiah Muhibat, head of the Department of International Relations from Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, in Jakarta. Pak Muhadi, Bu Syafiah, thank you for joining us. Now, Bu Syafiah, in Singapore, VP Harris has finally commented on the South China Sea dispute. This is the first outspoken statement coming out of the Biden administration against China. How much do you think this could shake things up in Southeast Asia when it comes to U.S. against China influence in the region?
Well, I think, instead of analyzing comments by comments from Harris that she made during the visit in Singapore, I think we need to look at it, the bigger picture of what the whole visit to Southeast Asia is about. I think it comes as the United States is facing fresh questions about its dependability and, after the pullout from Afghanistan and aftermath. And I think this is the first real test for the administration on the ongoing efforts to reassure the world that the U.S. can still be a trusted international partner. The U.S. is currently facing a lot of criticisms. It has been like that since the Donald Trump era. And what is happening in Afghanistan is casting doubt on the U.S. as a reliable major power, I think, including here in Southeast Asia. So, in Asia specifically, in Southeast Asia, I think Washington is seeking to reset relations after the Trump era. This is something that the region has experienced before. We remember many years ago, Obama's pivot to Asia, for example, during his second term. Back then, it had also been assumed that the U.S. has neglected Asia and thus needed to refocus. I think this time around, Biden's administration announces that America is back. We are seeing fresh initiatives, as you mentioned, with the vaccine donation, high-level visits, participation in ASEAN-led summits. If you recall, the secretary attended the ARF and the East Asia Summit. I think all this signal the U.S. is increasing recommitment to the region. But you're right. At the same time, it seems that the U.S. is also trying to build a greater sphere of influence against China. Now, can this attract sympathy in Southeast Asia? I think that was your question. I think the visit is part of the larger strategy. With all the current strategies, and we really need to see, to what extent the U.S. is willing to carry out the strategy. If it's just one comment and then they go away, they forget about the whole strategy in Southeast Asia, and I think that particular comment would mean nothing. And what's interesting is that the U.S.'s recent approach is actually really going along with Southeast Asia's priorities. The vaccine, the support for economic recovery, those really show appreciation to the priorities in Southeast Asia at the moment. And I think these are the things that will attract sympathy, not comments about the South China Sea.
Okay, Pak Muhadi, as you heard, Bu Syafiah talked about the bigger picture of trying to get the Southeast Asia's attention back to the U.S. How much do you think that is part of the agenda in terms of getting its feet back wet again in the region after 4 years of the Trump administration? And what do you think Southeast Asia's alliance is concerning towards the U.S. during the Trump era?
I think I almost totally agree with Ibu Syafiah with regard to the aim of the visit of the Vice President Kamala Harris to Southeast Asia. But I'm a bit doubtful about the effectiveness of the goals of the visit. At least three issues that are in my mind. Two of them have been mentioned by Ibu Syafiah. That trustworthiness of the U.S. as a reliable partner is still very, very low, at least in Southeast Asia. The case of the withdrawal of the U.S. from Vietnam, as well as the case of the abandonment of the TPP by the Trump administration, and more recently, the picture coming from Afghanistan. And the second one is that this is not for the first time that the U.S. has promised to refocus on Southeast Asia. by, for example, previously President Obama through the Pivot to Asia, and then Donald Trump with free and open Indo-Pacific policies. But all those policies are basically about the very, very grand narrative, grand concept that need to be translated into more practical action. And so, learning from this previous grand narrative or the concept, it is not possible for the U.S. to gain more importance to Southeast Asia unless the concept brought together by Vice President Kamala Harris can be translated into a concrete policy action. And finally, the third thing is that the U.S. really need to change the way in which it sees Southeast Asia as its partner, especially in the context of the confrontation with China. So far as the U.S. always look at the Southeast Asia as a partner to be on the side of the U.S. against its confrontation with China, then it will not be very successful. The U.S. need to see how Southeast Asian countries think about themselves in relation to China as well. And this is not very easy for Southeast Asian countries to take sides with the U.S. because the stake is very high for them.
Okay, so South China Sea is one issue. Vaccine diplomacy is another. The U.S. claims their vaccine is effective to fight against the Delta variant, but China also claims it is more suitable for consumers. Their product is tested based on genetics per country. An example, Brazil, India, and of course, Indonesia. One question for both of you. First for Pak Muhadi, how powerful is this vaccine diplomacy, do you think?
I think the vaccine diplomacy by the U.S. has been too late. And I guess that China as well as Russia have won the vaccine diplomacy. You know, there is an old saying that a friend in need is a friend indeed. And that was exactly the case with regard to the vaccine diplomacy. China has responded very actively during the time when the Western government, both in the US and the European Union, were very, very nationalistic in character of with regard to the vaccine. They tend to focus on themselves, while China responded very generously to the need of the developing countries, also for the Southeast Asian countries' demand for the vaccine. And so vaccine diplomacy should be seen not only from the point of view of the big or major power, but also need to be seen as an initiative by those who are in need of having vaccine, having the access to the vaccine. Like Indonesia need very badly the access to vaccine, and therefore Indonesia was very active in doing vaccine diplomacy with China as well as with Russia. And this needs to be taken into account as well. And during that time, both the US as well as the EU were very, very nationalistic in character, rather than very cooperative to assist these countries, including Indonesia.
Okay, Bu Shafia, Chinese vaccine has been pretty much dominating the Indonesian vaccine supply since the beginning of the year with many shipments, but the American vaccine is pretty much catching up with several shipments of their own starting this month. What's your take on this?
Well, if you're questioning whether vaccine diplomacy is an effective tool of diplomacy as a whole, I think during the time of pandemic, then the answer is absolutely yes. But I agree with Pak Muhadi saying that China caught it earlier in the game. When countries were scrambling, for example, including in Southeast Asia, countries were scrambling. China was the first to actually allow the supply of vaccine to enter Southeast Asia. Although to a certain extent, even though at that time it wasn't donation, so we had to purchase a large amount of vaccine. But when the supply is there, that's basically good enough. So I think now, the U.S. is playing catch. I think listening to Biden's speech that you aired just now is very interesting. That they're underlining that this is free. From the U.S. is donation. You don't have to purchase, no strings attached, you said. And I think it's interesting that they're starting to play the game of these vaccine diplomacy. But I think what's more interesting is that what comes after that. Yes, vaccine diplomacy is important during the time of pandemic, but I think what's more important is that, what do they do to follow up that? If they do, it starts to, open up their sphere of influence in Southeast Asia. Countries are becoming more sympathetic towards the US because of the vaccine. Then, they need certain strategies to follow up after that. And it'll be interesting to see, what they have in store in terms of strategy.
U.S. and Chinese influence in the Southeast Asia region in wake of U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris' visit to the Southeast Asia region. That is our topic of discussion tonight. My guests are Pak Muhadi Sugiono from the International Relations Faculty at Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta, and Bu Shafia Muhibat, head of the Department of International Relations from Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS Jakarta. We'll resume talks after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back as we continue our discussion. But first, I need to update you with the latest statement coming out of U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who's in Vietnam now. She says the U.S. was pledging $500,000 to the ASEAN COVID-19 response fund to allow countries in the region to purchase more U.S. vaccines. She launches a new Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Southeast Asia Regional Office. Now, getting back to my guests tonight, Pak Muhadi Sugiono from the International Relations Faculty at Gadjah Mada University, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and Bu Shafia Muhibat, Head of Department of International Relations, CSIS Jakarta. Bu Shafia, Indonesia is a key player in ASEAN and also in the Indo-Pacific region. Why do you think the U.S. chooses Singapore and Vietnam during Kamala's trip? And not to mention also, still fresh in our minds, the Trump and Kim Jong-un summit taking place in both countries.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's been the big question that has been asked quite a lot in various other Southeast Asian countries. Why Singapore? Why Vietnam? Why not? Why not Jakarta? Why not Kuala Lumpur? Right. And so on. I think the factors behind why Singapore and Vietnam have actually not been made public, so we can only guess. But I'm pretty sure it's a mix of a lot of different factors. But if you see overall, the trip to Southeast Asia is seen as a chance to bolster economic and security ties with key partners in the region. Some analysts view that the choice of Singapore and Vietnam reflects this strong economic and security underpinnings, but also related to some of the Biden administration strategy related to South China Sea. So, and I think, looking at the overall picture, I think they're trying to get the countries where they could get the most benefit in terms of their main objective going into the region.
Muhadi, do you think Indonesia should do something to try to exert its message more in terms of its influence in the Southeast Asia region regarding this matter?
Yes, I think for us, the choice of Singapore and Vietnam is very, very unfortunate because, as you mentioned, that Indonesia is one of the key players in Southeast Asia. But if we look at the choice from the U.S. point of view, it is very easy to understand. For the first case, the visit to Singapore is, of course, Singapore is traditional and probably also the closest ally of the U.S. in Southeast Asia. And with regard to Vietnam, this is quite interesting. Vietnam has a territorial dispute with China, especially in the case of South China Sea. And Vietnam has shown a very, very strong position with regard to the South China Sea against the position of China. But more recently, Vietnam is trying to be more moderate in relation to China. So this, I think, the visit will be aimed at reassuring Vietnam that Vietnam should keep the previous position with regard to the dispute with China. So I think the U.S. would like to make sure that Vietnam is on the side of the U.S. As I mentioned previously, that this is exactly the way in which the U.S. sees its relations with Southeast Asian countries.
All right. Now, Pak Muhadi, how do you think China will respond? Do you think we'll hear or see anything coming out of Beijing in the coming days?
I guess China will follow or is following the moves by the U.S. in Southeast Asia very, very carefully. In a state of competition with the U.S., China will be very unhappy, of course, with the move made by the U.S. But it seems to me that China is very confident that the relationship with Southeast Asia will not be disturbed with the move by the U.S. At least China is confident that the dependence of the Southeast Asian countries to China will keep the ties of the Southeast Asian countries with China very strong and will not be significantly affected by the move by the U.S. And especially if you remember in 2019, ASEAN produced ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific. It is very clear that ASEAN position on the competition between the U.S. and China is that ASEAN countries are not happy to be put on the corner to choose between the two countries or choose in the wrong side in the conflict.
All right, so according to Pak Muhadi, China is still very much confident. What do you think, Bu Shafia?
Well, there are already very strong comments coming from Beijing, after Kamala Harris's comment yesterday about the South China Sea. The China is really strongly playing their card right now, commenting on the Afghan issue, for example, condemning the US's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. So I think it's the nature of a major power competition that both sides will always be cautious about what the other is doing. And now, we are seeing a competition on all fronts, security issues, economic issues, and even, on health issues. So you see, the U.S. now is aiming to refocus its foreign policy strategy on competing with China's rising economic influence, rather than, continuing fighting, forever wars, like that has not end. If you recall, before the pandemic, they were already, trapped in the midst of a trade war. So, you see that, this is a competition on all fronts, and both sides have their own strategy. And I think from the point of view of Southeast Asia, what we need to be concerned is whether the ongoing competition could negatively impact the region. So it's apparent that Southeast Asia is now the arena for the competition on all issues, economic security, and that Southeast Asian states are being pressured into choosing sides, even though, you heard Kamala Harris says no. I think it is in our best interest that Southeast Asia remain peaceful and stable, and that we have more cooperation rather than competition.
Okay, Shafia Muhibat, Head of Department of International Relations from Center of Strategic and International Studies, CSIS in Jakarta, and Muhadi Sugiono from the International Relations Faculty at Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us your viewpoints tonight. And Asia Prime will continue with entertainment news. Stay with us.